I feel like if Sesame Street were to make an announcement, hey, we're switching the feathers because we want to align our values with our actions, then it would be easier to have this conversation in the fashion circles.
Hey, friends and listeners of the Switch for Good podcast. Yep, that's you. I have some really exciting news. Dotsie and I have started a Switch for Good podcast Facebook group. We created it so we can build a community of fans that will help us improve the show and deliver on the topics that you want to learn more about. So we want to hear what your favorite content is, what you want more of, and what you want less of. And if you like the length of the show, Dotsie and I are always talking about the length of the show, right, Dotsie?
Yes.
We want to tailor our show around the needs and desires of our incredible listeners, almost 500,000 of you. And it's really simple to join. Just go to our Switch for Good Facebook page. That's Switch, the number 4, and then Good. And then click on groups. And there we are, the Switch for Good podcast chat. You can post directly in the group, share ideas, talk to other listeners, and connect with like-minded folks. So go, run, join our Facebook group and tell us what you want.
Well, welcome to the podcast, y'all. As you know, here at Switch for Good, we are all about change. So today we are switching things up on the podcast. Instead of having one expert on our show to empower and educate all of you in the audience, we're bringing our inspirational audience onto the show. Today, we'll be sitting down with 3 lovely podcast listeners who each wrote to us about their life's journey and how they have become change makers for good. We were so moved by their heartfelt approaches and what they are creating in the world that they've all bravely undertaken that we decided to do a listeners episode and interview them each about their transformational journeys. First up is Jess McKay, someone who has found a way to combine his love of puppets and animal rights in a uniquely positive way. You'll also hear from Mary Cline, a woman who proves that change is possible at any stage of life. And if we are continuously open to learning about ourselves and peeling back our layers, we might just be delighted with what we find. Lastly, we're going to sit down with Jim Stark, a man who followed the standard American diet and ended up with standard American health issues. We'll learn all about his healing journey through plant foods, coupled with a willingness to change. And he took me up on my 22 days wine-free challenge. So we're going to hear how that went. Anyway, we know that you're going to walk away from today's episode inspired. And let this episode serve as a reminder that you, our audience, who nudges us every single day to live better and do more, that you have all you need inside of you to be a change maker. We thank you for spending time with Alexandra and me each week, and also for trusting us. And thank you for being a part of the Switch for Good team. The show would not be possible without you. We love you.
Jess McKay has some passions that, on the surface, seem like they have nothing to do with each other. Jess is a professional puppeteer and puppet builder, as well as being an animal rights activist based in Los Angeles. He's combined these two passions by trying to get leaders in the puppet industry to stop using animal products like feathers to decorate and create puppets. Jess was an elementary school educator when he realized just how much of an impact you can have on children, for better or for worse. He believes it's incredibly important to be mindful of the lessons and the ethics that we give to children, and Jess hopes to be a positive influence through his work. So Dotsie and I are really looking forward to learning about how the puppet industry can get kinder. Welcome, Jess, to the Switch for Good podcast.
Thank you very much for having me. So yeah, my name is Jess, and I am a puppeteer and a puppet builder. I'm based in Los Angeles. You kind of covered it with the intro, but I'm sure this happens to a lot of vegan people in their lives. They find that them being a vegan is only one part of their identity. And then, your profession is another, your family is another. And oftentimes one will have a different perspective on something else based on the fact that they're vegan. So I'm one of maybe 2 or 3 professional puppeteers in the industry who is a vegan person. And I'm the only person who's as much of an activist as I think I am. And so it's put me in something of an interesting position. I've been around puppets my whole life, but it was only a few years ago that I looked at, for example, Big Bird on Sesame Street. And through the eyes of a vegan, I noticed, wow, this is a lot of feathers that it takes to make this bird, this puppet. And I did a little bit of research, and through publicly available information and through speaking with people I know who work on the show, I found that it takes thousands of turkey feathers to make each of these puppets, and they have to remake these puppets time after time, and there's multiple editions of the puppets out at the same time. So a very conservative estimate that I've made is that for each Big Bird puppet, it takes at least 40 turkeys to be killed, and they take their feathers and they put them on these characters. Now, we use feathers for all sorts of things all the time. A lot of people have feathers in their pillows on their beds, and it's a ubiquitous thing. And the feeling that I strongly had is, okay, if we're a children's show like Sesame Street, where our main theme is being kind to each other and how we can be better to each other, then it really doesn't fit that mold to be hurting animals, to be building the puppets we're using to tell these stories. So that's what sort of got me into it. There's a little bit more to it than that. Beyond the materials that we're using, we also have the advertisements that Sesame Street will do. They advertise for milk products. In a lot of their branded Sesame Street foods, there's milk and eggs. So I'm trying to help people in my industry sort of become more aware of this aspect of morality, because as people who teach children, it's really kind of what we're imparting is a moral code and a moral framework.
Let's unravel what you said about for one Big Bird puppet, you need 30 to 40 turkeys, feathers from 30 to 40 turkeys. So I think a lot of people think, I know I did, in all areas of the ways that we use animals, that those turkeys are meat birds, right? And they just take the feathers off after they're dead. I know that is definitely not true in the leather business. Many people think it's dead cows and they take the leather off, but it's a completely different industry. So talk to us about the feather industry. What happens? What goes on? And are they live plucking like Patagonia is for the feathers inside those coats, or are they using the birds for meat too? Like, what do you know about the underbelly of this business?
Well, that's a great question, and I get it a lot because people feel, I eat this meat, so we might as well use the feathers. They feel like they're being environmental by using every piece of this animal. It's important in contexts like this to point out that the feathers are not a byproduct of the meat industry. They're a profitable co-product of the meat industry. And what that means is it's another way for this industry to make money and to continue doing what they're doing in a profitable way. So many types of feathers are used in puppets. The primary type of feather is actually ostrich feathers. And I'll go back to turkeys for a moment. As far as I know, those feathers do come from birds who were slaughtered. So they're not live plucking turkeys for these feathers, as far as I know. But when we look at ostriches, it's really difficult to find out it's difficult to find the source of where these feathers really came from. There's a lot of ostrich feathers coming out of South Africa, a lot coming out of China. A lot of them are labeled as synthetic or artificial feathers, when in reality, they're real feathers that have been dyed in artificial color. So people think they're buying fake feathers, but they're actually buying real feathers. And these ostrich feathers, they can come from live plucking. That's one way that feathers are commonly taken from ostriches. More often, they're also taken from slaughtered birds. And the ostrich skin is used for bags and leather. People eat the ostrich meat. But again, it doesn't fit in with the message of kindness that a lot of these shows have. And there's wonderful alternatives that work for my eye just as well for these puppets.
Yeah, I don't think none of us would approve of live plucking. And who wants someone to be plucking your feathers out, your hair out? You're still in captivity, et cetera. It's still exploitation. Why would a company say that their feathers are artificial when I would imagine that just like fur, there's more of a cachet if a feather is real?
Well, I think it's just a semantic term that people misunderstand in the feather industry when they're labeled as artificial. They accidentally appeal to vegan people when in reality, that's just a term they've been using for a very long time.
And they mean that they've been doctored with, colors or something like that.
Exactly. So they'll bleach the feathers and then they'll dye them an artificial color, which kind of goes against the environmental argument of it as well, because once the feathers have been treated with these chemicals, they can be very bad for the environment.
Mm-hmm. You've said that you will not work on shows that people where people have puppets with real feathers. I'm going to guess you have turned down a lot of work. How often does this obstacle come up? And do you use it as a teaching moment when you turn down the work?
I try to. I've had some successes where, for example, I worked at a new shop earlier this year. And before I even accepted the work, I told the head of the shop, I said, listen, I can't work on this if we're going to be promoting animal products or if we're going to be using animal products in the puppets. And he said, he's not a vegan person, but he said, okay, I understand this. I respect it. And on the very first day of work, he made an announcement to the entire shop. And it wasn't about me, but he said, hey, everyone, just want to let you know, we're not using any animal products on this one. And so that was a big win. That was a success. But to be honest, that's very rare. And I've run into much more resistance than I have acceptance in this industry about this stuff. I have turned down an awful lot of work because of this. I've had senior puppeteers pull me aside and say, hey, Jess, you know, you're torpedoing your career right now. But if I can keep my integrity, I think I'm going to feel okay at the end of the day about all this. Yeah.
Well, we love you for it, for sure. I'm an actress and I too have made drawn lines. And what I found is that when I can just think of a couple examples. One was when there was scenes with horses and I said, I'm sorry, I can't do this scene with this stampede. It was like some kind of stampede of horses. I'm like, how are you even going to do this, but I can't be involved. So I won't be able to do this movie if you keep this in. Well, the producers figured out a way. I ended up on a motorcycle and it was much cheaper and easier for them. And they actually thanked me later, like, oh yeah, that was actually pretty good. So there are ways where people will thank you, Jess. Are artificial feathers somehow less practical for puppets? Why wouldn't people go to artificial feathers? I would imagine it would be cheaper.
So I've thought about this a lot. That's another great question. And the biggest answer I can come with is that this is the way it's always been done. So in the puppetry world, especially the TV puppetry world, Jim Henson is sort of like this iconic figure, and he died in the early 1990s. And there's a sort of feeling in our industry that if Jim didn't do it, then we're not going to do it. And so he used ostrich feathers on the puppets. And so that's how we're doing it. You know, I was really disappointed. There's been a couple productions in the past few years that I've lobbied very hard to get them to get rid of the real feathers. There's a show being produced right now called The Electric Mayhem, which features the Muppets band that's being produced by Disney. Before, you know, when they announced that it was greenlit, I was reaching out to all the producers, all the puppet people, everybody I can, and they're sick of hearing from me. They know me. They're like, oh, Jess is upset about this thing again. But they're in production right now using puppets that are decorated with feathers. So I don't know what the answer is going to be. And my theory is the more people who know about this, the better. And to that end, I've started a change.org petition. If it's okay, I'll share it here. So it's change.org/sesame feathers. And there you can find more information about this. You can share your voice if you think that this is a change you'd like to see. Because I think it's really going to take, you know, massive public pressure for this thing to really happen.
Well, Dotsy's dog shared his voice and he agrees totally. And
That's good timing.
I have signed the petition and I urge our listeners and our audience to do so because I think it's such an important, sounds like a small step, but it's a giant leap for the entertainment industry, because once you stop with puppet feathers, then it moves to other issues too, like so much in the vegan world. People just become more aware.
Yeah. I think people have an innate understanding of what it means to avoid fur. You know, we all know Cruella de Vil, but feathers are still pretty ubiquitous on the red carpet. You know, you see Lady Gaga wore them to the Met Gala most recently. And it's something that I feel like if Sesame Street were to make an announcement, hey, we're switching the feathers because we want to align our values with our actions, then it would be easier to have this conversation in the fashion circles and in all sorts. I went to a wedding recently where a good friend of mine, she knows how I feel about this. She had an ostrich feather boa. So it's an uphill battle. It's a lot of work to be done, but I think we're going to get there.
Yeah. Tell us more about Sesame Street and are there other things? I saw on your Instagram, a strop, something that you use to sharpen your tools, and you
Yeah.
had an alternative to leather. What other things, talk about that, but maybe other things besides feathers that you feel can be improved in the puppet industry?
So I always say it's there's the big four. There's feathers, there's leather, fur, wool, and then there's silk too. All of these are used in puppet building in different contexts. I have been a puppet builder for a very long time, and for the past 12 years, I have not used any of those materials in my puppet builds. And I've built for Knott's Berry Farm, I've built for Disney, I've built for Comedy Central, I've built for Showtime. I'm building wonderful puppets that people love, and I'm not using these materials. So there's a way to do it. The leather is used on the inside to hold down people's hands for the strap on the inside, like a baseball glove sort of thing. Wool is, people make felt out of wool. So a lot of the times needle felting is a technique that people use to decorate puppets. And then just, embellishments with silk. For example, the Abby Cadabby puppet on Sesame Street, and this isn't publicly available info, but someone working on the show told this to me. Her scalp is made out of lambskin. It's like a lambskin, actual leather, and then the wool on top of it. That's the scalp of one of these puppets. So they build it this way because that's the way it's been done. I think oftentimes they're overbuilding the puppets. Like, these things aren't supposed to last 100 years. We can build a puppet that's gonna work for us using these alternative materials. The best counter argument that I've heard is a lot of the times these alternative materials are made out of plastics. So we have nylon, polyester. Those are not good for the environment either. They can be longer lasting than real feathers, so you don't have to replace them as often, but I'm very excited. There's these new synthetic bio-based furs that are coming out recently. EcoPel is the brand name that I'm familiar with, but I think that this is going to revolutionize the whole thing, because suddenly we're going to have animal-free, environmental, biodegradable faux fur available to use. And as soon as I can, I'm going to start implementing that with my puppet building.
There's so many places where we can replace, and it's just as good, quote, or so much better. One of the wonderful companies and humans that we've had on the podcast that produces cactus leather. We had them on, I think, Alexandra, like a couple of years ago, but the new high-end Mercedes that just came out, I'd say 3 months ago, is that company's cactus leather seats.
Wow.
And they are wildly luxurious and soft and wonderful and cushy and all the things that animal skin is, yet no misery and torture and maiming and horror. It's just, it seems like such a no-brainer. It's just, yeah, with what we can do today with materials and the ingenuity, it feels like we should just stop.
Yeah. Oatly made a 5-episode puppet show that was promoting its plant-based milk in the United Kingdom. Do you know if did they have the wherewithal to also be cruelty-free in their actual show?
Yeah, those puppets are great. Those puppets look like they are made with all, animal-free materials. And I was really happy to see that. Those are, by the way, I'm sure you've seen them, are fantastic. I really, really like those. And it was kind of cool because they made a bit of a splash in the puppet community. Whenever a new puppet thing comes out, all the puppet people are like, oh, look at this thing. And it's a really good looking one that also helps promote something that we believe in. In contrast to that, Korn put out an ad recently with Drew Barrymore, where she was running around with a life-size chicken. And that puppet, to my eye, looks like it's covered in real feathers. So there's some vegan companies that are, and Korn's not a vegan company, but there's some plant-based companies that are doing it better than others when they're being consistent with their marketing.
Yeah. What brought you to the animal rights movement in the first place?
It was a realization. I saw a video called Meet Your Meat. It was on PETA, and I just realized that I can't participate in that anymore. I didn't want to be a part of it, just no part of it. And the more I learn about it, I'm just like, we are living in a time where consent is very important. And I think that that's an important idea that has always been around, but it's so much more important now. And when we can take that and apply it do the animals consent to what we're doing? And as far as I can tell, no. So I don't really want to be a part of that. So it really was kind of like an aha moment for me. which makes it difficult to try to talk to other people about it, because you can't make someone else have an aha moment. You can just share the information that maybe meant something to you. But I think people are it's getting easier to become plant-based, to become vegan, in terms of the foods that are available to eat. You know, you can go to many fast food restaurants and there's an option now. So it makes a big difference.
Were you already a puppeteer when you became vegan? And was it hard for you to change? First, you changed maybe your diet, and then did you start changing what was going on in your work?
Exactly. Yeah. It was sort of all at once. It takes a while to make a puppet. I kind of just stopped buying those materials and using those materials, but it's only been in the past few years that I've committed to stop performing puppets that are using those materials, because I do see that as condoning and promoting the use of those materials. And I'm just drawing a line. I'm like, I'm not going to do it. I really wish, if there's any other puppeteers watching this right now, I really wish you would join me in this, because if we all together said, or even if a good 15% of us said, hey, we're not going to do this anymore, that's going to make an impact. If it's just me out here, I can only do it. I mean, I'm going to continue, but I don't want to be the one crazy guy in the background holding a sign up. You know, I want to make this art together because I love it. And it's really been difficult for me. For example, I've worked at the Jim Henson Company for years, which is kind of the pinnacle of puppetry. And this past year, I had to contact them and say, hey, I made the decision that I'm not going to work with feathers anymore. So I can't do this show that I had been working on. And I offered my time and materials. I'm a builder as well. So I said, hey, I've developed all these alternative materials. How can I change it for you? And to be honest, they gave me the cold shoulder. I reached out to them 3 times and they ignored me. After working with them for years, I said, hey, I can't work with you anymore. I'd like to make a change. And they, so that's the environment that I'm in. More often than not, that's the response I get.
Yeah.
Well, you are our kind of person, because you are following your values, even in the face of a lot of challenges to your own working life. And that's huge. What advice can you give to people who have really strong ethics, but are timid about implementing them beyond maybe their own plate or beyond their own personal life? Everyone has to draw their own lines, but how would you support them and give them some tips on how to do that?
Well, first, I need to acknowledge that I'm in a privileged enough position to be able to turn down work. And I understand that that's not the case for everybody. So like you said, you really do need to find your own line. There's an argument that making change from within is the best way to do these. So, you go along with something that might not be totally in line with your ethics, but the idea is maybe someday you'll get to a point where you can change from within, and that's totally legitimate. I think that everybody has to kind of, if you're a person who wants to make a change in the world, you have to look for the little opportunities that you can do that. You have to try. Sometimes you'll try something and it won't work. You won't get the necessarily the reaction you're looking for. Oftentimes, and really what I've come to for myself is like, I'm just planting seeds. I'm not going to see the tree grow. I'm not going to maybe even get to taste the fruit, but maybe that seed will grow into somebody having a different behavior about this thing. And maybe there'll be more trees. And, so at first I really wanted, you tell someone, hey, don't you know what's happening to animals? You want them immediately to go vegan. Once, why are you still doing this? But people just don't work that way. And it can be kind of frustrating, but the advice that I would give is to really just be patient, do the best you can, remain positive, try to find other people who are aligned with you so you don't feel like you're all alone. That's my wife is also a vegan person and she's an activist and she's so supportive of me. So that's a very important thing.
That's beautiful.
And we are very supportive of you too. Thank you so much for writing to us and educating Dotsie and me about this, because we had no idea about the puppet industry, and you have made an impact on us and I know our audience. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you both so much. This was great.
And it's change.org/sesame feathers, right?
Yes.
We'll
change.org.
Okay.
Either forward or backslash, one of the two will work.
Yeah.
Sesame feathers.
All right, we'll get that in the show notes too, as people go, sign, right? How many signatures do you have? How is it going?
We're just short of 400 right now. It's going
Okay.
okay. I've sort of put the brakes on sending out the constant, hey, tell your friends to sign. But I am anticipating that it's going to continue to grow. And my goal right now is 10,000. And
Awesome.
when we have that, we're gonna send it off to the gym. They're already aware of the fact this petition exists, but I think 10,000 is the number when I'm gonna stop promoting it. So we'll see.
Okay. All right. Let's drive that forward. Audience, have a fabulous day. Thank you so much, Jess.
Thank you both.
And I don't know how many people can relate to 15 to 20 migraines a month. I now have 0 to 4. I think that's incredible.
Mary Cline underwent a huge and powerful transformation during COVID. She was 60 years old when the pandemic hit. And during that time, she cut alcohol out of her life, dove into a plant-based diet, and wait for it, lost 80 pounds.
Mhm.
She learned a lot about herself during this time period, including the fact that she was an introvert, something she had never, ever realized before. Mary is here to talk to us about transformation at any stage of life and why she says, I've never felt stronger at 62. So welcome, Mary, my fellow introvert, to the Switch for Good podcast.
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, gosh, I got to say, people are listening to this. When you wrote to me, I heard you and I thought, gosh, so many people slid backwards in their health and other areas of their life during the pandemic. But some people thrived and made incredible gains like you did. What were the positives about the pandemic and being at home that helped you make these monstrous changes?
Well, yeah, being able to work from home, but for sure, because that is something I've been discussing with them forever, and they've never wanted it. They still don't want it, but
is the work.
Yeah.
Okay, and you've been there for many years.
Many. But what I saw was like with COVID, the forced having to get together all the time, kind of put some space on that. I looked back in my past, when I looked at 20 years ago, like what did I value then? And where did I go? Where did I compromise, basically? So, I looked at vegetarianism back then and did it for a long time. I had watched, this is back when you had like 3 stations on your TV, and it was some sort of like documentary on veal. And I just realized I didn't want to participate. I didn't want to participate in that. I didn't want to participate in the insurance industry or and probably didn't call it the medical establishment at that time, but basically it was the insurance. So how to get back to that? Because when they were saying everybody's like mostly overweight, they have diabetes, they have heart issues, those are the ones rushing to the hospital with COVID and not wanting to participate in that. And there's I listen to a million podcasts, yours is one, but a book, and I love the title, is Own Your Health. And just, we have all these people that you should take, pull yourselves up, but not help with health. Yeah. We go to the doctor for that and get a prescription for that. And there's all these emergencies. Let's protect the medical workers, don't get COVID. But a heart attack, you're taking up a space as well. And you can, not everybody, but a lot of people can self-correct. And the fact that I feel so good, I wasn't expecting this. I think I was 30 pounds in, still overweight. Like, I don't care if I lose any more weight. I just feel so good every day. I never felt like this in my 20s.
Tell me what you did to make it easier for you to make this change.
I'm not a cook. I don't like to cook. I watched a couple of the Chef AJ's one, and one of them, she said she doesn't like to cook either. So she showed all these simple things, like the soup in the Instapot, which I had an Instapot, don't cut up the onion, just put it all in there. You're going to blend it later anyway. I'm like, oh my God, yes. So things like that, and she said to get an air fryer. I got the biggest air fryer you can. And so I eat pounds of potatoes every day, like 1 or 2 pounds, for sure. I air fry them. I make my own ketchup because I went off of processed food as well. It's just not vegan, or it's, I don't do processed food,
You're a whole food, plant-based.
Yeah. Now, if I go somewhere and there's the Impossible Burger, I'll eat that, but I can't have gluten because I've had migraines for 20 years, and I'm talking 15 to 19 a month. And since I went this route, I've been able to find out the main, some of the triggers, and get rid of those. So having that, and I don't know how many people can relate to 15 to 20 migraines a month. I now have 0 to 4. I think that's incredible. 4 migraines.
Relief.
It's nothing. It's nothing. Yeah. 4 migraines is nothing in comparison.
So what I heard you say in the beginning was there was some self-reflection involved.
Yes.
That first week or 2 that you're at home. What did you uncover? What did you dig up? What did you look back in this reflection and go, that part needs to change, or I want to make change in that part of my life?
I didn't put up the boundary then, because when I did this, I told people, I'm not compromising ever again. Don't invite me. I'm okay. And that's after the introversion, looking at that, I'm like, that was easier said, just don't invite me. I don't care.
Well, tell us about that, because you wrote to us after you heard Dotsie talk about, how she felt she needed to, at social gatherings, she's an introvert and she didn't feel comfortable. So she would always feel like she needed to have a drink in her hand to make her feel more comfortable. And that resonated with you. And it was really the fact that you realized that you were an introvert, but you hadn't honored it before. And when you talk about boundaries, like you've mentioned, you didn't have the courage to tell people, I really don't want to come out and play.
Yeah.
And somehow the pandemic gave you that. Well, you weren't even asked to come out and play in the pandemic. So you were able to kind of get yourself together and be your true self, right?
Right. Yeah. And enjoy not going out and not participating in things. And it's not like I mean, Dotsie does it too. We see, Dotsie talks to you. We talk to people. We see people. We do get together with people. But, I don't feel like I have to drink, and this is like from high school. We drank all through high school, that's just what we did. And every time you get with the people from your past, that's what you did with them. You just drink with them. Everything that people want to do is like dinner or lunch, like, well, can't we just go to the museum and then we'll go our separate ways, things like that. But, a friend of mine, she spent her high school in a way, in a specific, she goes, well, I was, in a hospital for a couple of years when I was in high school. And I'm like, and I drank through it. We're kind of, you had your way and the rest of us pretty much did it this way. I mean, drinking in high school, she had her way of boundaries, her way of getting through high school. And I drank, me and lots of other people, we just drank through ours, because that was the activity you did, So it was quite common.
So when you first decided, okay, now that I've recognized that I care about animals, I care about my health, I don't want to just go to doctors and then be tell me what to do and follow them blindly. I want to take my own health.
Yeah.
What were some of the first things that you did in your house to make it so that it was easier? You said you bought an air fryer.
I bought an air fryer, an expensive one.
And
I just bought vegetables and, fruits and just switched everything, and that was that wasn't gradual. I was doing smoothies a lot, and I didn't do, I don't do a lot of smoothies. I eat more, and I don't eat right away. I get up at 5 a.m. and, I do things around the house. I ride a bike, and I don't eat till like 11, or noon. And it's a salad, like a several pound salad,
Right.
not several pound, but at least one, and that's like the first meal. And then I eat potatoes later and fruit all the time in between, or carrots or whatever. So, my things like that. I didn't necessarily purge a lot of stuff out of the house because I didn't cook, but I stopped, with COVID, but I stopped ordering food, Grubhub or whatever they are, I stopped, doing a lot of that. Oh, you could get vegetarian, but you didn't know what was in them, because I'm not doing a lot of oils, I eat out like once a week now compared to, when you go to work every day, you go to lunch, and when you're eating at home, you make your own. So things like that changed drastically when you didn't go to work every day, and you're not around people who that's what they do,
Yeah.
and they're not taking care of themselves. And most people aren't. So
Most people are. Well, you're feeling so incredible now, and you look incredible. And 80 pounds is like a whole person that you lost.
Yeah.
And so you're probably still a little bit on the high of the extraordinary transformation that you made. Is there anything, let's say for someone who maybe made the switch 5 years ago and felt really great, but is kind of sort of in a rut now.
Mhm.
What are you implementing into your life that will ensure that you don't go back to old habits?
It doesn't even occur to me to go back.
Mhm.
I'm not even really worried about it. Yeah, it is 2 years in, but I'm not craving anything, every once in a while I have chips and salsa, like, because I live in Texas and that was like my big, food. But other than that, it just doesn't occur to me.
Well,
Now,
what about when the environment, when you have to go, let's say you have to go back to work, or you get more pressure to go out. Do you think that will present challenges in terms of your routine and your habits now?
no, I won't have to go back because, I'm older and can say goodbye. So I won't have to go back to the office. That for sure is for me. However, if I did, everybody knows, I've made it pretty clear. And like, I do have to go next week and they want to do a dinner. And I'm like, I'm not that fun for you guys to eat out. I don't eat this. I don't eat that. So they found a restaurant, I think started by Andrew Weil, or, I'm not sure if that's how you say his name. And so I looked at the menu and I'm like, okay, yeah, I can eat there. And so they're catering to me.
Because you've started to share about your boundaries.
Yeah. And I want them to join me. I want them to stop eating that stuff too, because I think they would feel better. Our insurance costs are really high. Okay. Some of these diseases have been really expensive and some we couldn't do anything about, but some we probably can, if they start eating like me. And I don't even know if they have to completely eat vegan, but why waste calories on that type of food?
So you've been immersed in this very introverted, positive environment with yourself for a few years. So I'm sure you've been out in the last couple of years, but you're going to go out with your friends from work and hang out with them. Are there any aspects of letting go of the drinking or the wine? For me, it is very much, yes, I feel uncomfortable, but as I've just always continued to learn more and more about being an introvert, we're just also very much comfortable when we have control over our environment. And so the social gatherings like that, like you don't know what's going to happen or where we're going to go and what it's going to be. It's really uncomfortable to feel out of control in the environmental setting, I should say. So are you concerned about that, or have you already kind of dealt with that when, I don't know, the first time you went out and you kind of wanted a drink to feel a little bit more comfortable?
No,
but you
I
didn't?
haven't. No, I haven't felt any. Alcohol's been a piece of cake. It's not like,
Oh, good.
I didn't drink. I never drank daily. It just wasn't a main thing, So holidays, the first Thanksgiving, I took stuff, nobody ate it. And they know I can't. Well, for one thing, they know they're like, well, she can't cook. She's never been able to cook, and she probably can't, So there's that. And they're just, my food didn't. I tried to match, and the next holiday, I took Thai food for myself, and just ate Thai food and was perfectly happy. I think every holiday should just have Thai food, and you'll be good.
Not a bad idea.
There was just so many people there. They didn't notice. I was just one person eating my own thing,
That is such an important thing, I
Yeah.
think, for us to remember, is that really most people don't care what we're doing. They're thinking about themselves.
Yeah.
So you do a lot of cycling for charity
Oh,
in
yeah.
the town of Fort Worth, Texas. So
And I always have.
I know, right. We knew that. And so I want to know what it feels like to have 80 less pounds on the bicycle, what it just feel. I just some specifics to encourage people who are inspired by your story and your journey over the pandemic, who say maybe not 80 pounds or maybe 80 pounds or 60 pounds or 50 pounds that they want to lose. I always have said, I wish there was like a pill that we could give people who are suffering and inflamed and in agony and just don't feel good on a daily basis, to say, this is what you're going to feel like.
Yeah.
Right. And so they just had 24 hours to know, oh, it's worth charting that course. It's worth the work because I'm going to feel this way.
Yeah.
How do you feel different? In what ways? In what parts of your body? At what times of day? Like, tell us the big difference.
So I get up every morning and I ride 30 miles, basically, I rode all winter. I didn't make it every day, but I do these big charity rides, 60 miles, 70 miles. I am riding the whole thing and I am feeling so good at the end. Before, I did it before, and you feel that high, However, you're getting to the point where, okay, I have 20 miles left. And a couple of weeks ago, I had 20 miles left. I'm like, wow, I feel like this is over so quick, and it was I'm in Texas, but there are hills and they're just not super.
Rollers. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love rollers. But it was like nothing. I'm so much stronger on the bike than I was in my 40s. I don't know. I'm riding faster.
So your repair and your recovery, literally, when you're on the bike, is and then your blood flow, because you're getting more oxygen to the working muscles. It's right, and you feel afterwards. Is it? I'm assuming now it maybe doesn't take you as long to feel, quote, back to normal, like after a 60-mile ride.
No, not at all. And I get up the next day and ride again, in a couple of weeks, I'll do 100 miles. But
the more energy.
Yes.
Like just so much more energy. Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, the migraines, the fewer migraines, and I imagine less, because you're less inflamed, less aches and pains, joint.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah. All of that is less. Therefore, I'm not relying on the drug companies. I'm not taking their painkillers and, which that helped, helped get by. But, it's
Yeah.
people, the doctor, they don't talk about what you're eating. And
No.
we know it just doesn't occur to them. And they're not even going to tell their other patients, well, this one, she's completely, almost completely free of them. But she eats this way,
Well,
They're
you
not gonna
probably
share.
inspire some of your doctors to make changes, just like you've inspired our audience too, because you said you're 62, you feel better than you did 20 years ago.
Yeah.
That's something that a lot of people wish for. So thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your journey with us.
Well, thank you.
It can be difficult. It can be overwhelming. I don't want to say difficult. It's overwhelming. You're used to the standard American diet. It's just a whole different way of looking at your plate. So I would say don't get discouraged. There's a lot of resources out there.
Our third super listener is Jim Stark, one of our most loyal subscribers and an active participant in the Switch for Good Facebook group. Jim grew up in a traditional household, consuming the standard American diet that was full of meat and dairy products. This diet took a toll on his parents over the years and resulted in them developing the standard American health issues. As Jim grew up and landed a job in the financial world, he felt his own health declining as he ate unhealthy foods, traveled a lot, exercised little, and regularly consumed alcohol at networking events. Jim developed high blood pressure, high cholesterol, atrial fibrillation, also called AFib, Hashimoto's hypothyroidism, a pulmonary embolism, and a spot on his lung. After suffering with continuous episodes of AFib for 3 years, he had his first of 3 ablation surgeries and ultimately changed his lifestyle to a whole food plant-based diet. It took him 3 years to heal from his health issues, and he now lives a happy, healthy life in upstate New York and now has over 5 years without an AFib episode. Congratulations, and talk about transformation, Jim. Welcome to our show.
Thank you.
Dotsie and I were really excited to meet you because we see all your encouraging posts on Switch for Good Facebook page. You also post delicious recipes, either restaurants that you've gone to or things that you and your wife have cooked. So thank you so much for that. And everybody, if you want to see more and hear more from Jim Stark, join our Switch for Good Facebook page. So tell us, Jim, first, what inspired you to adopt a plant-based diet?
Well, as you mentioned in the intro, with all the health issues that I was going through, I really didn't know what to do. Honestly, I was kind of at a loss of how to resolve the issues. The things the doctors told me to do, it wasn't getting any better. And it was after the first ablation surgery, and there were some complications with that. I was in hospital telling my brother what I was thinking about doing, and he introduced me to the China study by T. Colin Campbell. I read that. He told me about the Forks Over Knives video, watched that. And that after both of those, I just decided I was going all in to change my lifestyle. And I did. And it took me a little while to get the hang of it. It was tough at first, but I kept it up and got some basic recipes and things like that I stuck to. And within 3 years, it was probably 3 years, you could notice some differences with my health. Cholesterol, blood pressure and stuff, that kind of reversed itself pretty quickly. The AFib took some time. As I pointed out, I had 3 ablation surgeries. Even after the third one, still had problems. Probably for about a month, I was good. And then probably for about 3 months, I was still having episodes, probably on a monthly, even more often than that. They had me on a monitor for a period of time and really couldn't pick anything up. So what I said to my wife is at that point is when I said, I got to get rid of the processed foods, the oils and stuff like that, the vegan processed foods. And I did that for about 3 months solid. And from that point on, I have not had a problem. And actually, You mentioned alcohol before. That was something else that I eliminated because that was a huge trigger for sure.
You
So,
mentioned like some sticking points. You said, you didn't do it overnight and you had some points that were difficult and challenging. Tell us about those for listeners who are maybe in those sticking points right now. How did you push through, and what were they, and how did you get around them or through them so that you could stay on course with what your goal was, which was to completely change your health and your life?
well, some of it's learning the foods that you can eat that are available to you.
Okay.
So, I mean, growing up, and we didn't have legumes and beans and all that kind of stuff, so that was all fairly new. So it was learning how to use those, how to put them in recipes other than just putting it into a salad, and just understanding the difference in how your plate was going to look. You're so used to having a big piece of meat or whatever on your plate and then surrounding it with a little bit of vegetable or something like that. And pulling that out, it's okay. Well, how do I replace all of those? How I did it is, I followed a lot of doctors for a while. Dean Ornish was one of them. He had the spectrum, and the way he looked at things was a big help to kind of wrap my mind around how you build your plate. Dr. Neil Barnard was another one. They have a lot of information regarding how to build your plate and different things to eat. I never used meal plans, but what I did, as I mentioned, is I probably had 5 basic things that I went to, and that's what I did for a while. And then just constantly doing research to find recipes and just keep building my knowledge around, how to eat, how the lifestyle was, and those kind of things. And that's what kept me going.
And what were you doing before? I mentioned it a little bit in the intro, but share with us how you were eating and what your life was like in terms of healthy habits before this sort of aha moment that you had.
Well, as you mentioned with the intro, as far as exercise and things like that pretty much became non-existent. With work, as I started advancing in my career, there was a lot of travel involved. So I would travel at least 1 to 2 weeks a month, and that went on for many, many years. So constantly eating out, eating restaurant food, animal products. Again, very little vegetables. You might get potatoes with a steak or something like that, but you wouldn't get much in the way of vegetables. And then there was always alcohol involved somewhere along the line. And I put on weight. And that's, when my cholesterol and everything went up. I didn't think much about it. I thought that's just the way it worked, like most people feel, quite frankly. But I didn't buy into it. My doctors told me there was nothing I could do. And I didn't buy into it. And I even, for example, there's Chronometer in MyFitnessPal. I got to the point where I was
those for everybody are apps that you can input your food in.
Right. So just to experiment, I would plug in what I was eating. And one of the main things that I did, and I still do, is in the morning, I have a pretty big smoothie. I throw just about everything under the sun into it. But I would plug that into those apps, and I would compare it to what I used to eat for breakfast. And just looking at the difference in the nutrients, the lack of the bad things, and more of the good things, that's what kind of convinced me that I was moving in the right direction. And it was motivation too, to see what you were putting in your body and what you were missing before just eating the standard American diet. So
you, as we also mentioned intro, you wrote to us, I think in May, after I had talked about doing a 22-day challenge of not drinking alcohol. For me, it's put the wine bottle down. And you decided to take on the challenge for yourself. And you said in the email that you actually find that when you drink, you don't really sleep all that well, and you're kind of moody when you woke up in the morning, not nearly as productive, and you felt like it was kind of keeping you from doing the things that you would love to be doing.
Absolutely.
Tell us about what you were doing with alcohol, like when you were using it, why you were using it, and why you wanted to make this change and decided to take on this 22-day challenge?
As I said in the beginning, I kind of got away from it to a certain extent
Right.
and or minimized it, I should say, with the AFib problems. And quite frankly, it kind of picked up again during the pandemic.
Because you had completely quit, is the way that I understood it, for the alcohol, but
For a period of time.
For a period of time before.
For a period
and
of
then,
time. And then it
right.
kind of just, not maybe once a week, maybe once a month, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But then when the pandemic hit, that's when I also took a cooking course through Ruby Online Cooking School, and it's all about plant-based cooking. And as I was cooking, I was decided, well, why don't I have a glass of wine while I'm doing this? Because I'm doing it for multiple hours, prepping and cooking and things like that for the class. So I would have a glass of wine or two while I was doing that. Then it became, let's have it with dinner, after dinner, things like that. It just became a bad routine. And I can't blame it on anything other than myself, quite frankly. It was just something that happened and, didn't think about it, quite frankly. I mean, you think you mentioned in your intro about the challenge that wine for you is very easy to form a habit around. And I definitely feel the same way. Mm-hmm. I don't have the same interest in, liquor or beer or things like that. For whatever reason, wine just kind of hit that switch.
And so when we talked about the 22-day challenge, was it prior to that or after you took it out for those days that you realized, hey, wait a minute, like I'm clearer, I'm sleeping better, I'm not moody? Like, did you know that's what it was doing to you?
Yeah, I kind of expected that it was doing to me. And like I mentioned, and when I told you that I was starting this, I actually started probably 3 weeks prior to that to only do it once a week. And it was with dinner when my wife and I would go out to dinner. And I could notice a difference with that. But just taking the challenge and getting rid of it, eliminate altogether. The nights that I would have it or didn't have it, I noticed the sleep was better too. Mm-hmm. And to be honest with you, it didn't matter if I had 2 glasses or 4 glasses. It affected my sleep. I would wake up, no lie, it was like a light switch went off, 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, be wide awake and have trouble getting back to sleep. And it was always associated to me having the wine. And the sad part is those were the timings with my AFib too. 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, it would trigger and I'd be woken up out of a sound sleep. So.
Wow. I just want to stress to everybody that neither of you are saying that you're alcoholics. It was just that you were noticing that you had a habit that was just not serving you anymore. It was getting a little out of hand. Mm-hmm. And you recognize that you were better either to minimize it or to take it out right away. Have you completely, since the 22-day challenge, how have you incorporated back the alcohol, if at all?
I think I do it once a week. I mean, there's times where I've probably had it more than once a week, to be honest. The example would be my nephew just got married this past week in Philadelphia. So we were down there and it just was kind of an easy opportunity to have some. So that was the last time I had any wine. I'll have another challenge this weekend because my son's getting married. So.
Oh, congrats.
Congratulations.
So I'll have to be careful then.
Well, you did write to us and say how, because we were lucky enough to get like weekly updates on your challenge. It was so great. You did say that weeks 2 and 3, you were going to be socializing and you were curious about how that was going to affect your challenge and how challenging was going to make it. Share with us how you handled when you went out to dinner.
Yeah, I mean, the first one was we got together with some friends, and it's kind of a thing we do monthly. We get together with friends and just chat, and usually there's wine involved. When we got together with them, I didn't drink. I just drank water. I didn't have seltzer or anything like that. And, they kind of asked the questions, how come, what's going on? They were all pretty much concerned that, there was some other problem. And I explained to them about, the sleep, just feeling more focused, present, those kinds of things. they kind of got it, and it led to some other conversations around that too. But they were good about it. And then the other example was I went to a retirement party for a friend of mine, and there was alcohol there. I wasn't drinking, but I was drinking seltzer with a lime. And
Our little trick
yeah, that's right.
to have nobody ask any questions, which
That's
is kind
right.
of nice
Put a little
sometimes,
swizzle
especially at a
stick in
wedding.
there, and nobody knows the difference.
Well, good for
Um,
you. Yeah. So and did that go okay? Because that was
Yeah, it did.
yeah.
It,
good.
it led it more into my vegan lifestyle than anything. So that kind of eased this situation up, and could give people some information to think about.
Mm.
Yeah. How do your friends react to the plant-based diet? Like, have you had some intriguing conversations with friends your age that are maybe experiencing some of the health difficulties that you were experiencing before you made the switch?
Yeah, I mean, I have there's a couple friends like that.
Yeah.
And some of them want to hear it, some of them don't. I mean, they'll listen and they'll ask. And I mean, it's the typical questions. Where do you get your protein? Those kinds of things. And, you know, that's easy to explain. I have one friend right now who was just went in for a coronary calcium scan, and the numbers didn't come back so good. So he's got to go in for a catheterization. And he and I, on the golf course, for different reasons, it would come up and I would just kind of broach the subject with him. And yeah, he wasn't really interested. So we'll see what happens when I talk to him again.
Yeah.
How old are you, Jim?
61.
61. So you're living proof, just like Mary Cline, who we interviewed right before you, that it's never too late to get better and be healthier and more vibrant.
Not at all. Not at all. And I started this path 8 years ago. So I was 50. Well, actually, I was 53 when I started. So yeah, it's a little over 8 years.
Now, I'm very jealous of your cholesterol, by the way, because you shared your numbers and you got down to 130 total cholesterol and your LDL went down to 73.
Right.
Fantastic. And then you tell us what happened after that when you got those super low grade numbers.
Well, I was really happy, but I started incorporating, trying some of the vegan food that's out there, like the restaurants that I've showed pictures from. And
Right.
I used to go back every 6 months to have it all checked out. And I noticed the numbers go back up, and especially the LDL. And LDL went back up into, I want to say it's like 109. And I just decided from there that, you know, the fat, the oils, those kinds of things, I just needed to eliminate those from my diet. So I did that. I took it out and it went right back down. So.
And how about the Amla from our friends? Well, that's where I know Amla Powder from, our friends Robbie and Cyrus, the Mastering Diabetes.
I heard it from them, but also
You did?
Adam Sudd also talked about it. Yeah.
Adam Sudd and Dr. Greger talks about it too, or has talked about it.
Yeah. And you use it? You
do.
use Amla in your smoothies?
Yeah. I put a teaspoon in the smoothies every morning.
Nice work.
When you emailed me about that, I'm like, gosh, I need to start doing it, because I'd forgotten a little bit about, you know, how you get into a routine, then some things you forget. Like if you have vitamins and you run out, if you don't make sure, you can sometimes forget to refill and incorporate it back in. So you inspired me to reincorporate the Amla in for my own cholesterol.
It's easy to find on Amazon.
Yes.
It's a good sized bag too. It'll last a while.
Yeah, exactly. You only need a teaspoon or something. So,
right.
And tell us about this workout routine of yours that you've started back up since just totally transforming.
Yeah, I mean,
the yoga and golfing, and you're walking the whole course, 18 holes, and
I'm walking the whole course, 18 holes. I mean, I used to do that all the time. And when I got back into golf a year ago with my brother and this friend of ours, they were always taking the cart golf cart.
Right.
And I said to my wife one day, I go, I need to start walking. I just don't like the cart. And it just so happened, my brother texted me one day before we were going out. He goes, by the way, I'm going to be walking. I said, oh, cool. So I'm all set for that. So I walked. A friend of ours still takes the cart, but we go out, we walk each time. It's a 4.5 hour or 4 to 4.5 mile walk each time. So
Wow. So if you
Great.
walk the golf
Legit.
course, you get, wow, that's great.
Yeah,
And
depending on the size of the course.
I also love you get some quality time with your brother.
Yeah,
Yeah, he sounds like he's been a really good influence on you and that you two are close.
he has. He has. I wish I could get him to go vegan, but he's not there.
Not there yet.
Yet. Say use the word yet. How about your wife? Is she on the journey with you?
Yes and no.
Okay.
She's probably 70 to 75% there.
Awesome.
I mean, when I'm cooking here, I won't cook anything else. When our rest of our family comes over, she'll do most of the cooking because I don't want to say refuse, but I pretty much I won't cook what everybody else wants.
Oh, got it.
And she doesn't mind doing it. So even on the holidays when they're over and they're cooking different things, it's like, you want to carve the meat, you can carve it. I'm not carving it.
Yeah.
So
Oh, that's great. Any other
Yeah.
things you want to share about how changes you might have made that you want to share with folks who might be wanting to make changes in their own life?
really just do your research into the lifestyle and the diet. It can be difficult. It can be overwhelming. I don't want to say difficult. It's overwhelming.
Good
Because
word.
you're used to the standard American diet. It's just a whole different way of looking at your plate. So I would say, don't get discouraged. There's a lot of resources out there. It's, take advantage of them. I mentioned some of them. And actually Michael Greger is a great one too.
Mm-hmm.
And actually your power plate's a good one.
Good.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Well, Dotsie sent out a lot of power plates to
A lot.
listeners.
We ran out fast. Now I'm electronically sending them because so many people are still listening to old episodes and that offer is in there. So
I have mine.
good. Very cool.
That's
That
a
is
good one to
helpful.
have. Yeah, I mean that's the best thing I can say is don't get discouraged. Keep doing your research. Look for good recipes. And I mean, I always point out Monkey and Me Kitchen Adventures site. That is a great site for whole food plant-based cooking. It's not complicated. Most of the ingredients are easy to find, and
Yeah.
it's definitely one to take advantage of. I found that late, but it's definitely worthwhile.
So Monkey and Me Kitchen Adventures.
Yep.
Oh,
Monkey
fun. I don't know about it. I'm learning something from you. Okay, cool.
We appreciate your support and your desire to get better, and your story is an inspiration. So thank you for being on this show and for inspiring this show in the first place.
Yes. Yeah, no doubt on that.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, folks. Okay. Back by very popular demand is our plant-powered plate fridge magnet, which you are going to receive for free if you leave us a rating and a review on whatever platform you're listening to this podcast on. So here are the details. Just write your quick review. Does not need to be long, does not need to be a whole story. Just be honest and speak from the heart. Then take a quick screenshot of the review you wrote and email it to us at podcast@switchforgood.org. That's podcast@switchforgood.org. And include your mailing address so we can send you a power plate. We are doing this because the more reviews we garner, the higher we go in search results, which means more folks will learn about our podcast. So the power is in your hands. Leave us a review and zoom, your power plate arrives at your doorstep.
So thank you so much for tuning in today. If we helped you in any way, then click the subscribe button and let's keep hanging out together. We have so much more to share with you.
And if you need more information on actually making the switch for good, please visit us at switchforgood.org for loads of info. And you can subscribe to our mailing list where you will receive all sorts of super cool gifts, discount codes to our very fave dairy-free products, and a lifetime of powerful health tips.
So join us on the journey to switch for good. This is the future.